The Nobel Prize is considered one of the most prestigious awards in the world, but throughout its history, it's also been plagued by controversies and unfortunate decisions. Keep watching for the messed up truth of the Nobel Prize. Alfred Nobel's decision to set up the Nobel Prizes came from a place of personal terror. His claim to fame was explosives, particularly his most notable invention, dynamite. As dynamite's explosive power was inevitably appropriated by the military and it started killing thousands of people in war, Nobel's groundbreaking invention started to understandably have a rather murderous reputation. It's unclear whether Nobel personally approved of his invention's military use, but he was reputedly something of a pacifist and he seems to have been unaware of the bad name dynamite was giving him. But he found the truth out the hard way in 1888 when his brother Ludwig died. Several newspapers around the world accidentally printed Alfred's obituary instead of Ludwig's, and the explosives mogul was deeply shocked when the press treated him critically for profiting off of people's deaths. One French paper even wrote, "The merchant of death is dead." Desperate to improve his legacy, Nobel wrote a will that allocated most of his considerable wealth into founding the Nobel Prize organization. Jocelyn Bell Burnell is a Northern Irish astronomer who was instrumental in discovering pulsars. But when that discovery was awarded the Nobel Prize for Physics in 1974, Bell Burnell's name was nowhere to be seen, as the prize was instead awarded to two of her male colleagues. This was hardly an isolated incident. In fact, according to MIT Technology Review, the Nobel Prize suffers from a deep gender bias. From 1901 to 2018, there have been 112 Nobel Prizes for physics awarded, and only 3 female laureates. Overall, only 21 of the 688 science Nobel winners have been women. This issue was examined by a research team at the University of Copenhagen. They analyzed the gender ratios of Nobel-worthy scientific fields and compared them to the gender ratios of Nobel laureates, and there's a clear disparity. The research team did note, however, that this is not necessarily because the Nobel Committee just brushes off female candidates. Instead, it may have more to do with the significant biases and other hindrances that women already face in their fields. Prizes generally have one winner and many more losers. That's why it's important to get the winner as correct as possible. Unfortunately, the Nobel Prize's track record in this regard is somewhat dubious. The list of controversial Nobel laureates includes the likes of Fritz Haber, the 1918 chemistry winner. His invention of the industrial production of ammonia hardly changes the fact that he was also the man behind World War I's infamous chlorine gas. Then there's Antonio Igues Moniz, the 1949 winner in physiology and medicine, who invented a little procedure called the lobotomy, which is hardly considered a great achievement by modern standards. And then there are the dubious Peace Prize winners. In 1973, there was U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who was bombing Vietnam while negotiating the ceasefire that he won the award for. 1994 saw Palestine's Yasser Arafat share the award with Israel's Yitzhak Rabin and Shimon Peres, which was weird not only because they failed to end the Israel-Palestine conflict, but also because Arafat was hardly a peaceful and diplomatic leader. Another strange Nobel decision was President Barack Obama's Peace Prize in 2009. The Nobel Committee itself admitted that Obama had few concrete peace-themed achievements on his resume, instead arguing that the prize was for peace efforts. Even the president himself has admitted that he has zero idea what the prize was for.
I did get the Nobel Peace Prize.
Oh, really? What was that for?
To be honest, I still don't know.
Did you know that back in 1939, Adolf Hitler was a Nobel Peace Prize nominee? Yes, that Adolf Hitler. It's worth noting at this point that there are many people who can nominate someone for a Nobel Prize. Among them was Swedish Parliament member Erik Gottfried Christian Brandt, who thought it would be funny to nominate Hitler for the Peace Prize. Brandt laid it on thick in his recommendation letter, with phrases describing the German Führer like a God-given fighter for peace who would pacify Europe and possibly the whole world. Brandt's intentions were honorable, as he was a staunch anti-fascist who intended to use the letter to point out Hitler's terrifying nature as the #1 enemy of peace. Unfortunately, sarcasm works on Nobel nomination letters about as well as it does on social media, which is to say, not very well. Brandt was branded a fascist, and his recommendation got him banned from several lecturing gigs. Hitler obviously didn't end up winning the prize, though ironically, there's a good chance he would have turned it down. He disliked the Nobels ever since his vocal critic Karl von Ossietzky won the Peace Prize in 1935. In retaliation, he set up his own Nazi version of the prizes and forbade German citizens from ever accepting a Nobel. Despite its problems, a Nobel Prize is still one of the most prestigious awards around. That's why it might be doubly embarrassing when a recipient who's being informed of their honor just stares blankly and says, "No thank you."
It's like thanks, but no thanks.
This has actually played out on multiple occasions. The first person to refuse a Nobel was French philosopher and writer Jean-Paul Sartre. who politely declined his 1964 Literature Prize. His reasoning was that he never accepted any official distinctions because he felt this would institutionalize him and limit the impact of his writing. He didn't intend to cause a scandal, though, and was sorry that he did. Then, in 1973, North Vietnam's Le Duc Toa joined Sartre in the exclusive Nobel Refusal Club. Toa was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize jointly with U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger for their efforts in ending the Vietnam War. But when the U.S. alone embraced the trophy, it became evident that Toa wasn't happy to join the celebration. The reason he gave was that he couldn't accept the Peace Prize while war was still raging, and though he said he might reconsider in a more peaceful time, he never did. It could be argued that this was a wise choice, as critics have pointed out that Toa and Kissinger, who happily accepted his prize, also played a part in creating the war in the first place. In 1997, the Nobel Prize for Economic Sciences went to Myron Scholes and Robert Merton, who, along with their late colleague Fisher Black, managed to create a new method for determining the value of derivatives. The practical use for this method was, according to The Guardian, a holy grail for investors. The Black-Scholes formula could predict the market, enabling wily investors to trade derivatives at a lightning pace, which sent the market into a feeding frenzy. The equation itself was quite functional. Unfortunately, the people using it got a little overexcited. By 2007, the global derivatives trade was an absurd $quadrillion. That's 1,000 million or 1 followed by 15 zeros. Hedge funds and banks started relying on the equation more and more, but they didn't know when to stop. As the subprime mortgage market started showing signs of instability that same year, the process turned on itself. As The Guardian put it, trading on derivatives became the black hole equation, sucking money out of the universe in an unending stream. And that's how you get a global financial market collapse big enough to warrant its own entry in Encyclopedia Britannica. In 2008, a fresh Nobel laureate named Harald Zerhausen sparked a fair amount of controversy, even though he seemed like a fairly innocuous choice for the prize for medicine. He's a German virologist who discovered the link between the human papillomavirus and cervical cancer, and he shared the prize with 2 other scientists who discovered HIV. That's terrifying but useful knowledge, all things considered. Alas, many people started wondering about the fact that the pharmaceutical juggernaut AstraZeneca had dibs on an HPV vaccine, and they would turn a profit if Zerhausen won a Nobel. There was also the suspicion that AstraZeneca's desire to get to those patent royalty profits may have motivated the company's collaboration with the Nobel Foundation's website and the Nobel Media Company to produce content and promote the prize. It's probably also worth noting that an AstraZeneca board member also sat on the committee that awarded Zerhausen the prize. Ultimately, it appears that this whole chapter amounted to little more than allegations and probings by officials, as collaboration between the company and the Nobel Prize Inspiration Initiative continues. 2018 saw one of the most public scandals surrounding the Swedish Academy, the institute that awards the Nobel Prize for Literature. That was when Jean-Claude Arnault, husband of Academy member Katrina Frostenson, became entangled in a sexual assault scandal. 8 women filed formal complaints against Arnault, who was eventually sentenced to 2 years in prison, but the troubles he caused for the Swedish Academy had only just begun.
We came to the conclusion that trust in the Swedish Academy was so low internationally that it would be better not to award a prize this year.
It turned out that the Academy had partially financed a culture club run by Arnault and Frostenson, which started drawing accusations of conflict of interest. It didn't exactly help that Nobel winners are a popular subject of betting, and Arnault was reportedly in the habit of leaking the names of Nobel Literature laureates before they were announced. The Academy fell into deep disarray over how to handle the situation, and as the dust cleared, 7 of the 18 Academy members, including Frostenson, decided to walk away. The 2018 Nobel Prize in Literature was canceled, though it was eventually awarded to Olga Tokarczuk of Poland. Expectations for the 2019 Nobel Prize in Literature were high after the previous year's scandal. The Literature Prize is typically not the most offensive one, so one scandal was already an aberration from the norm. Nevertheless, the Academy managed to jump right back in the proverbial pigsty by awarding the prize to Peter Handke. Handke is an Austrian writer and firebrand who's known for his Serbian nationalist sympathies, and he doesn't hesitate to show his feelings. In 1996, he courted significant controversy with 2 essays that blamed the media for presenting Serbs as the evil party in the Yugoslav wars and Muslims as, quote, the usual good guy. It's worth noting that the Yugoslav wars involved an incident called the Bosnian Genocide, in which Serb forces killed an estimated 100,000 Croatian civilians and Bosnian Muslims. The process behind the Nobel Prizes is a fairly secretive one, so when Swedish prosecutors started launching investigations into allegations of bribery, it surely raised some eyebrows. In 2008, the officials became interested in the affairs of 3 Nobel committees when it transpired that their members had received free trips to China from the Chinese government. The trips, which took place in 2006 and 2008 and involved a total of 5 committee members, were all-inclusive affairs with hotels, flights, and food all paid for. What makes this particular situation so strange is that even the committee members themselves realized and fully admitted that the whole deal raised some red flags. As reported by The Local, the matter was addressed by Bertil Friedholm, a participant on one trip and head of the committee that's in charge of the Nobel Prize for Medicine. As he noted, "It's a borderline case, but we discussed it ahead of time, but it is borderline." Sven Lydon, a member of the Nobel Committee for Chemistry, also went to China despite expressing even more doubts as he admitted, "Just the fact that you're asking about this makes me think that it's possible that it would have been a better idea to pay for it from Sweden." Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more messed up history videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.